Willkommen bei PloneConf 2024. Bem-vindos à Plone Conference. I do not know how to say that, the numbers in Catalan, sorry. Boas-vindas à Plone Conference 2024. Esse ano a gente acontece também com a Pai do Cerrado. Essa é uma conferência bilíngue ou poliglota. This is a polyglot conference because people from all over the world, people that only speak their language and they are from the US usually, right? I'm doing that because I know lots of US friends are watching just to make fun of you, but you're missed here. Nós estamos sentindo falta dos nossos colegas dos Estados Unidos porque essa semana tem Thanksgiving, né? E parece também tem um tal de Black Friday, então o pessoal de comércio está sofrendo. There's also Black Friday, so if you're watching online, and I'm talking to the camera now, we have a Telegram group. Please join this Telegram group. Send your questions over Telegram. We're going to create a topic in there so you can send your questions. If we have time to questions, we are going always to pass to the speaker. So please use that. Also, if you have any problems, there's a tech support topic there. Send a message there. If you post online media, use the hashtags PloneConf 2024. Se você postar nas redes sociais, usem a hashtag Python Cerrado 2024 ou Plone Conference 2024. And not talking any longer, I would like to invite the 3 keynotes we're going to have today. They're going to come here, talk, and they're going to switch by themselves because they are adults. They can do that. So, first of all, I would like to ask you, primeiro eu gostaria de pedir a vocês uma salva de aplausos, a round of applause to Mr. Timo Stollenwerk from Germany. Come. We are going to have the State of Plone. When you introduce Víctor, you ask for the applause because that works. And have fun. Timo.
Thank you, Erico. And thanks for having us. And thank you. Image optimization, which is a great book, by the way. And at 5 a.m. in the morning, I wake up because I can't sleep any longer, and I start to optimize the image loading times of a government website because that's the fun stuff that I do, right? And then my son wakes up, and I'm like, then it's done. But this is what I do, right? And why do I do that? Because I'm really passionate about what I do, right? And I see lots of people here who are also as passionate as I am about this, right? And sometimes we are so passionate that it's hard for us to find the right balance between like family, friends, and the things that we like, that we love to do, right? And in PloneConf 2013, I had 2 weeks up front the Plone conference. That was rarely the case for me. But I had 2 weeks that I spent a fair amount at a beautiful beach at Porto de Galinhas. And I was sitting in front of my computer coding and preparing my talk. Eric Steele once said that being a Plone developer means that you travel the world to stare at a screen, right? And when I prepared this talk, I realized that this story isn't entirely true because I actually spent the 2 weeks with Case here. Case, I got to know him through the Plone community, and we had a great time when we weren't staring at our screens. We went to a soccer match. We went running at the beach. We had a very memorable night with the 4-digit crew in the evening before the conference that nobody remembers. Talking about remembering, when I thought about this before preparing this talk, it occurred to me that I don't recall what I worked on, like the slides that I prepared or the Plone part that I worked on. I have no clue, to be honest. I would have to look it up. But I remember the people that I spent time with. And you might ask, why should I care, right? I mean, hey, Timo, you're giving a keynote here. You're trying to sell a CMS, right? Or like convince us to use that or whatever. Stop with the life lessons. But I will try to give you a few reasons why you should care about this. So one reason is that technology can feel like a storm sometimes. If you're a hardcore nerd and if you're really into what you're doing, you sometimes don't realize that, right? But when I prepared this talk, I looked at the Gartner quadrant and ThoughtWorks, Technology Radar, and whatever you look at when you're looking for buzzwords, right? That you can take as a starter, right? Don't take those things too seriously, but as a starter, right? And it became clear to me, or it's obvious, that CMSs became a niche, right? Nobody talks about CMSs at all, right? About all CMSs, not only Plone, but CMSs altogether. So they talk about like maybe the newest JavaScript frameworks that change every few years, right? Or machine learning or other things, right? Or blockchain, right? About the fancy things that we know and that are interesting. So that made me realize that what we do here is not really about technology, but about the people behind it, because technology constantly changes, right? And if we look at Python, at Plone, and Plone is a mainly written CMS, a web CMS mainly written in Python, right? And it has been around since more than 25 years, I think now. So we underwent a major transition from Python 2 to Python 3, right? Younger people might not even realize that because they start with Python 3, right? The language itself changed. I met this morning with Luciano Ramallo at breakfast, and we had a talk about like Python, right, and how it evolved. We have machine learning. We have the scientific community that's heavily invested into Python. We have async these days, right? And to be honest, I went a bit out of technology in recent years because I had to take care of the company and boring stuff, right? But when I think about what happens in Python, and I still try to follow things, right? I really feel safe, and because I know that Maurits and other people here got my back, right? People like David, people like Jens, who worked on backend on Python stuff, right? I know that we have very capable people who work on this. And if you want to know more about what we do on the Python, on the Plone backend, go to Maurits' talk, and he will also introduce that. That's Maurits, and you're awesome. So in recent years, we started to rewrite the front end, like many other frameworks out there, in JavaScript, right? Because the JavaScript is the way to go, because like a few companies decided that it would be a good like move, right? And now we have JavaScript frameworks. And around like 5 to 6 years ago, I worked as a consultant, and I was really into JavaScript frameworks a lot because I worked as a technical lead for like large groups of developers. I was helping our certain clients to decide what framework they should go with, right? Angular, React, Vue, whatever. And Víctor will give a talk about the Plone 7 roadmap and all the JavaScript, all the updates that we'll do in JavaScript. The good thing about this is that JavaScript frameworks kind of like came down a bit, right? So it's not like changing every few years a new framework. So we choose React. We made a good choice there, but still we're evolving, right? Because Plone is a complex system, and people often don't realize that. If you toy around with the latest framework, it's easy to get started, right? Like, or in Python with Fast API, right? Fast API is awesome. I mean, it's awesome. You try it and it works, and it's great. You don't have to learn much, right? Same is true for JavaScript frameworks or any other frameworks. But if you have a huge system like a CMS, like Plone, right? The code grows a lot, right? And we're evolving, and Víctor will talk about this in his Plone 7 roadmap talk, and also later. Our front end, as I said, is Volto. So we rewrote lots of the parts of Plone in JavaScript. And Rob and Rule, Rob here, over there, together with his colleague Rule, they built what became Volto and Plone 6, the Plone 6 front, within 2 weeks, right? I made a joke on the stage in Bucharest. Back then, we were using Angular heavily, and Rob was the only person who wanted to use React. And I made the joke on the stage that he should just write what we started in Angular in React, right? Because he was alone, and I'm kind of a mean person when I say that now, right? but what, I mean, he's a smart person, right? So what did he do? He just wrote Volto, and then at some point we reconsidered and we went with that, right? And Víctor and others put lots of effort into it, and that became Plone 6, right? And here we are talking about Plone 6, Plone 6.1, right? The rest is history. And technology changes a lot, right? We see that if you're in IT, technology has changed, right? Like 10 years ago, I couldn't have imagined to use JavaScript or anything else, right? Or use React, whatever. But it changed, and it will continue to change, right? And during my career, I met lots of smart people. Some people are even too smart, so that it's hard for them to work together. So the key to success is that actually smart people are working together. And does it work? Yeah, I can also take this one. Sorry. It won't help if I speak louder, right? Because it's on tape. Hooray! So that works. Okay, awesome. Okay, I'm going back one slide. So it's all about smart people working together, right? And the working together is the important thing here. And this is something that you cannot buy. This is not for sale. And this, I realized this when a dear friend of mine who heavily got into startup business and VC funded business. He is a serial entrepreneur, and he asked me if I would join his company at some point, and I declined. And then I invited him to a sprint in Bonn that we organized. And a sprint is something that we do in the Plone community where people come together and work on Plone together. So we were walking up the stairs, and he asked me, "Hey, Timo, can I buy your company?" And I was like, in a millisecond, I said no, right? That was my reaction, because I'm at my happy place. I would never sell my company, because my colleagues are awesome and I love where I am, right? So no money in the world could buy that. But after that, I started to think, what if I would had millions of euros like he has, right? And I could buy anybody I would want, right? To work with me, right? And go to someone and say, "Hey, I want to work with you, join us," and give them whatever they ask for, right? Which is what my friend kind of could do. And I went upstairs and I came to that room, and there were 20, 30 people sitting there. And I was looking at them, and I thought, for every single person, I thought hey, I would love to work with them, right? I mean, they're great. They're smart people. They can collaborate well. I love working with them, so I would love to work with them. And if I had millions of euros, I might hire them. But then I realized this is not going to happen, because I can't, right? I won't be able to convince everybody there to work for me, no matter how much money I had, because that was true for me. And I know that this is true for lots of other people, right? Money can't buy everything. And that made me incredibly happy, because I realized that I can't buy that, but I have that for free. I can work with those incredible people for free. They pay for their own expenses to come there to work on Plone for a week, right? And you just can't buy that. And that made me really, really happy. So again, why should I care? Why should you care, right? So look around. If you're using a CMS, a web framework, a JavaScript framework, if you're using open source, if you're in IT, it doesn't matter. But if you look around, you see things like the WordPress drama, right? Two really, really big companies are fighting over hundreds of millions of euros. And the company and the community and the people that use it are just in the middle, right? There's nothing that they can do about it, right? Because there's lots and lots of money in there. And that's, I guess, not a good feeling, right? I'm not a WordPress developer, so I can't fully relate, but I would guess that this is pretty bad. There was the case of Elastic versus Amazon a few years ago, right? One of the biggest company in the world was involved there, Amazon, and one of the biggest open source companies, Elastic. And Elastic complained that Amazon was using their product without paying them fees, right? And they changed their license. And I know lots of people that use Elasticsearch, and they got nervous, right? They kind of solved that problem, which is good. But still, the community was still in the middle, and it could have turned out in a different way, which is pretty bad. Entire open source communities completely break apart, and that happens, and sorry for being German-centric here. Typo 3 is a system that's, I think, mainly used in Germany. And they did what we did with Plone. They rewrote lots of parts of the framework in React, actually, right? And in PHP, they also use a new framework on the back end. And their plan was always to move from Typo 3 then to Neos, right? And have a smooth transition. So into them heavily, right? Because you want to have investment security. And the third part that's really important, in my opinion, is sovereignty. If you look at the elections up north, very much up north from here, from European standards, that changed a lot. And I have the feeling that in Brazil, people have a better understanding of what sovereignty in terms of IT means, right? That this is important, that you basically control the things. We'll hear very good talks about the Brazilian government using Plone. And I think this is incredibly important. And I think that's something where I at least have the feeling that in Germany, we didn't realize what the elections in the US mean, but also in general, how important it is to own your stack, right? And ensure that your stack will stay the same as it is, right? So if you look at Germany, yeah, we have nice castles, but in Germany, politicians make bold claims about using open source as a default, right? They say if we do a public tender, we will ask for open source first, right? But the reality is, and there's a study about this, a recent study that says like 99% is actually spent on Microsoft and friends in Germany, right? So there are bold claims of politicians, but the reality is completely different, right? The highest ranking person in the German government when it comes to IT, the kind of CTO of Germany, is a lawyer and always has been, right? And I think that might be part of the problem. We had actually one person in the government who is a computer scientist. He's from Bonn, so I know him. And he became the data protection officer, and he wanted to do another term. And he got actually screwed by his own party. They kicked him out because he actually did his job, nothing more, right? So this is the state of like IT in Germany. And when I look at Brazil in contrast, right, I'm amazed what I see here. Lots of what happens in Brazil is wishful thinking in Germany, right? And if I look at the talk conference, we will have amazing talks about what people do in Brazil. We have the GovBR, we have two GovBR talks, one by Marco Sousa. I was just told that GovBR is the 30th biggest site in the world. We'll have another talk about unifying government communication in Brazil. We will have a talk about the Interlegis program, about the legislative chamber, and the efforts, the long-time efforts to digitalize the legislative process, something we would dream about in Germany, and about Portal Padron, the public face of the Interlegis program. We have a talk by Lucas about the Lucas, are you here? Oh, he's running. Rain. Amazing. For German, that rain stops something. But I know it. I've been to Barcelona and it snowed there like once in like 20 years or so. And everything broke down. That was amazing for German. Electoral justice. Electoral justice is amazing. I'm like Errico told me lots of things about that because he's my colleague, and I was always amazed. And it's amazing how many users they have that they have in real time, how scalable Plone is. And every single time that Errico told me something about it, honestly, I felt small. I felt that our projects that we do at Concept or that I do are small in comparison to what you folks do in Brazil, right? And I'm also proud to know that the code that I write or the code that lots of people here write is actually used for the for democracy in Brazil, right? And for the process there and for the government. This is really something that makes me proud personally. We also have a case study about the G20 portal with Plone 6 and Volto, and it's amazing that you pick up the latest technology that you're using Volto for the G20 website. So please have a look at those talks. They will be amazing. I'm pretty sure about that. Plone is not only used in Brazil, but literally used everywhere in the world, in South America, North America, Europe, Asia, Africa, and governments around the world, not only in Brazil, uses Plone. The European Union uses Plone heavily. The European Environmental Agency uses that. Odo Webb and Code Syntax gave talks about this in the past. The European Agency for Cybersecurity uses Plone. In North America, the FBI website uses Plone. Astrid Byers will give a talk about how Plone is used in the pre-elections in South America. I'm also really looking forward to that talk. Astrid, where are you? Ah, I saw you this morning. Hey, this Astrid. So the Red Turtle folks, unfortunately, don't give a talk about the government and municipality use cases, but Wagner will give a talk about A11Y. You're doing amazing work, both for governments, municipalities, and also for the Plone community for A11Y. Our Italian friends have the use case or the legislation that the backend needs to be A11Y compliant as well. That will happen in Germany as well, but we're always a bit behind, right? So our clients do not realize that yet. So it's awesome to be in an open source community where Italian folks like do the work that you will have to do in a few years. So thanks for that, and sorry that you had to take that bullet. You know that sometimes it's the other way around, right? So. I will give a case study about how Plone is used by governments in Germany, both for websites and intranet. I will talk about intranets that we build for government agencies. Universities and in general education and research uses Plone a lot. So in Germany, lots of universities uses Plone, like in Berlin, Bonn, Dresden, Gießen, and others. In Italy, Bologna, Ferrara, Bari, and others use Plone. In the UK, Oxford, Stanford. In the US, Michigan, and others. Also in Japan, Osaka University uses Plone and others. Two of the largest research organizations in Europe, both German-based, use Plone. This is the German Aerospace Center. They have a budget of, I think, 2 billion euros per year. So really big website. They use Plone 6. The German research, the Jülich Research Center also uses Plone with hundreds of websites. I will give a talk about multi-site setups during the conference. And Marc Vicente from Barcelona, he will also give a talk. There's Marc over there about the Alba Synchrotron website. It's a synchrotron light source in Barcelona, and they use Plone 6 and Volto, which is awesome. Lots of other use cases are out there for Plone. NGOs, for instance, use that, big and small. Amnesty International uses Plone. The Clean Clothes campaign uses Plone. Paul Ruland, the person with the bunny ears, will give a talk about the value of longevity and the CCC website and how this evolved over the time. And Plone is really used everywhere in the world and for a wide variety of use cases. However, there's a problem with that, because the more generic your solution is, the less specific it is. And if you have a particular use case, and especially if you have a large project, you might have to reinvent the wheel, right? And the more generic your framework is, the more likely it becomes that you have to reinvent the wheel. And there are two problems with that. One problem is that, first of all, you might not have the budget to reinvent the wheel and to put all that effort into it, because not all projects have millions of euros of budget or a few hundred Ks of budget. The second thing is that you're dealing with client expectations. So if you look at government agencies, for instance, or others that are used to buy Microsoft products, for instance, or commercial products, they expect to buy it today and have it delivered tomorrow, right? And if we really want to compete with those commercial solutions with Microsoft, we have to also compete with their solutions. And one of the ways that we can compete with them is what we have in Plone 6.1, distributions. So distributions allow us to compete in a better way for certain vertical markets, right? So I showed a few use cases of Plone: governments, education research, NGOs, intranets, blogs. There are lots of use cases, and distributions will allow us to create more suited solutions for those vertical markets. So they allow us to work together more efficiently. And as I said earlier, this is key to success, in my opinion, that smart people work together, and to work together is the important thing here, right? And the other thing here is that markets are different, right? We had a conference in Germany last year, and we had an open space with lots of universities from Germany, and we talked about how we could generalize the way they handle institutes, right? If you're a university and if you have hundreds of institute websites, right, you want to handle them in a way. And when we discussed it, it occurred to us that not a single university was like the other. They always had slightly different use cases, right? They were organized in different ways, right? Some universities are more oriented towards research, others more to education, and they just have different structures, right? And unifying is hard, but distributions will allow us to easily create different kinds that are even configurable, right? So we can go after those vertical markets. And if you ask what are distributions, we already have two distributions today, which is Classic UI and Volto, right? So you can use Volto as the default frontend for Plone 6 that you should use. But if you heavily invested into like Plone 3 or whatever the version is that you have, you're on Classic UI, right? And that's a different distribution, so a different flavor of Plone that makes sense for you to use, right? And we always had distributions in Plone. We didn't call them distributions, right? In Brazil, we have the Senate, the Portal Modelo, the Portal Padron. We have Crave, right? Guido is over there. And we have at least 3 other Plone internet distributions, though we had them in the past, right? We can have distributions for blogs, for training sites. We had a video portal once, right? Why not again? So before I tell you more about what's in there for Plone 6, for Plone 6.1, the recent version that we will publish soon, I will slightly, if you want to know more about distributions, so what is a distribution? So a distribution is nothing else than a Plone installation that's easy to install and that comes with a pre-configured Plone. Right, so you can pre-configure add-ons, you can configure configuration, you can make sure that the configurations work together, and you have example content, right? So that you can show to the outside world what you can offer. And if you want to know more about distribution, you can start using them today with the latest Plone 6.1 alpha. Then go to GitHub to plone.distribution. And this morning, David told me that we also have documentation for it. So David stepped up to give a lightning talk about documentation and distributions, right? That's what I understood. And this is distribution. So before I go to other features that we have in Plone 6.1, I will briefly talk about Plone 6, which is the base and the version that we released last year. So with Plone 6, we have a great base for distributions and for your project. We have a great product that's very user-friendly. we were able, with the project during the pandemic, to train hundreds of editors that were used to be trained in person with a 2-day training. We trained them with a handful of Plone videos, right? During pandemic, when they weren't able to talk to each other, just videos, and hundreds of editors were able to use Plone, and they love Plone. So Plone is a really user-friendly CMS, and we value that a lot. Plone has world-class security. The FBI is using Plone, the European Agency for Cybersecurity. We have a bulletproof backend with lots of stability. We have a state-of-the-art front end that not many other CMSs have these days. They're still struggling. There's WordPress, there's Neos that made the transition, but all the other CMSs are actually stuck in the past. So we have the Plone REST API, that's the glue between the front end and the back end. And Víctor will talk about an API-first approach. You can talk, if you look at Gartner or something, or Friends, you will hear API-first, headless CMS, hybrid CMS, or API-first. Víctor will talk about it. The important thing is that we have an API, and this API is used by our front end, right? So our API is actually feature complete. And everything that you can do with that, Víctor will show that in his talk. So Plone 6.1, in addition to distributions, we will have lots of small improvements. The grid and teaser block is one of the blocks that has been around since quite a while as an add-on product. But with Plone 6.1, it became part of core. And I will briefly show you what you can do with it.
As an editor, you have your hands full. The main focus should be on creating good content. Designing the pages and updating the content should take little time. This is where a star duo comes into play that previously only existed as an extension for Plone, the grid and teaser blocks. Now they are an integral part of the core application. With the grid block, you can create sophisticated and appealing pages in no time at all. In addition to teasers, images, texts, or listings can also be used. Would you like to change the order of the teasers in the grid at a later date? No problem. It's as simple as drag and drop. With the grid and teaser block, editors have many design options at their disposal.
So this shows why Plone is user-friendly and easy to use without like a huge training or anything. In addition to the grid teaser enhancement, we also had this as add-on products before, and we listened to our users and we realized that we have something that we need to improve from the early implementations. So we came up with an improvement in Plone 6.1 to have dynamic teasers, and I will show you what that means.
Teasers are a great way to prominently link content on a website. With an image, a meaningful title, and a short description, they are not only informative, but also visually appealing. If the image, title, or description of a page has changed, the teaser previously had to be updated manually. This is now a thing of the past. The new teaser block is dynamic by default. Only if users explicitly want to deviate from the content of the target page is this still possible, of course. The dynamic teasers make everyday editorial work with Plone much easier.
So this is something that will improve a lot with teasers if you use Plone 6.1. Plone always has been good as keep links working if a website evolves over time, right? It warns you if you break a link, if you remove content that will break a link. And with complex page layouts that I just show you, this use case became more complex, right? And we wanted to have the same functionality that we had before with simple web pages, with teasers and grid blocks and others. So we took care of this problem, and we even introduced a new view that allows you to see where content is used, in addition to cloning.
Sometimes it is important to know where a piece of content is linked to. For example, if you want to clean up old content. The new menu item, Links and References, serves precisely this purpose. You can see where the content is used in a clearly organized list, and you can access the relevant content directly via a link. You will also be warned in the dialog if there are still links to this content if you want to delete it. Plone allows you to keep track of how your content is used.
So you see that Plone 6.1 has lots of small improvements that we listen to our users and slowly improve Plone, because Plone 6 has been great, right? And a huge leap forward. So we only see small improvements, which is a good thing, I think. Another small improvement is the blocks ordering via drag and drop.
In Plone, you can easily move the elements of your page using drag and drop. However, this can be somewhat cumbersome for very long pages. In this case, an outline view would be an advantage. For this reason, there is now a new Order tab in the sidebar with the settings. Here you can quickly get an overview of the page structure and move blocks over longer distances. With this new function, it is even possible to move elements from one grid block to another. It has never been easier to design your pages with Plone.
Skip that because we're running out of time. Another feature is images and object browsers.
Let's be honest, images are often poorly named. So if you want to find a suitable image for a page, the file names rarely help. In the new version of Plone, it is therefore not only possible to search for images by name. Instead, you now get a convenient preview. This allows you to find the right image more quickly. Of course, you can still display the images as a list with file names. But as the saying goes, a picture says more than 1,000 file names.
So this is one improvement regarding the image handling, but we have lots of more into the pipeline. I can't go into the detail because we're running out of time. So these were some of the new features of Plone 6.1. Maurits and Víctor will talk a bit about the roadmap towards Plone 6.1 and Plone 7, both here in the keynote and in their individual talks. So to sum up before handing over to Maurits and Víctor, so the superpower of Plone is the people behind Plone. Plone continues to innovate. We see that with Plone 6.1. Distributions will allow us to use this superpower more effectively. And I'm really looking forward to listen to all those amazing talks that I mentioned here, to connect with the Brazilian Python community and with the Plone community to see what we're doing. And I will now hand over to Maurits and Víctor. Thanks.
Yeah, so Plone is, of course, in the backend. Yeah, it's a Python CMS, really based on Python. And in Plone 6.1, we've removed support for Python 3.8 and 3.9. So you need at least 3.10, so you can use some newer language constructs and newer modules that are available. So that helps. So yeah, supported 3.10, 11, and 12, and we're working on 3.13. The biggest part there is already done because Zope works with it, which is the level below Plone. And yesterday I saw that there's a problem in core Python itself, which should be solved in 3.13.1. So within 1 or 2 weeks, we can start testing a bit more actually with Plone 6.1. And yeah, Plone has rather a large core. Yeah, not so large when you compare it with all kinds of JavaScript frameworks. But still a lot of packages are in there. We're trying to make that smaller. One part of that is to create more core add-ons. For example, you can make multilingual sites and add discussions. That has always been, or for a long time been, in the core of Plone. And it still is, but we've now renamed it as a core add-on, which in this case technically means if you only install the basic product CMS Plone package, then you don't have those two options anymore, but you can simply just pip install or use build out, whatever you want, install them again, and you have those same things there as well with the same support. Just because they're called core add-ons does not mean that they're suddenly out of support or something. We're just I like using them, especially the multilingual part. And yeah, in direction of Plone 7 will also move more classic UI code also into more core add-ons for that and still use that. Yeah, the classic UI is also still being modernized, especially Peter Matisse over there is doing a lot of that. And yeah, for example, there's a newer TinyMCE version for rich text editing. We're using the latest one now that's still supported as well. And also we keep up to date with the latest Bootstrap versions for the CSS, the styling. And yeah, one thing that has changed, there's a new widget for if you need a related item. Either the related items field or you want to add a link or an image to a rich text field, and that looks something like this. Let's see if that starts playing. Yeah, well, want to add an image somewhere. Okay, it's in a folder, in a subfolder, and yeah, which one shall I take? Yeah, let's try that person, and then it's there. That's a much smoother experience than what was previously in the classic UI. I'm keeping it short for this part. You can look at this afternoon at 2 o'clock. I think also here I'm talking more in detail about the backend. So now it's over to Víctor to introduce more stuff from the front end and Plone 7.
So yeah, I'll try to be brief, but I wanted to talk to you about two things. The first thing is that about Plone 7. So yes, we are actually already working Plone 7, and we are happy to announce this during the conference. And yeah, it happened during the last Salamina sprint in Ferrara 2 months ago. And yeah, we had a near magical discussion in there where everything, all the pieces went together, and we assembled this initial proposal for a roadmap for Plone 7. And yeah, basically, we will have new user-facing features like having a better the editing interface experience than a keyword manager or image cropping, and above all, improvements in the accessibility, right? Because we will focus Plone 7 in accessibility using better libraries for that. Then we also have a huge undertaking in the architectural and structural of Volto, because we need to change a few things in there and modernize them, including the way that we build Volto using Vite, or storing blobs allowing storing blobs in object storage, or even more ambitious, like having a completely detached editing experience application from it, so we can put it anywhere, basically. So if you want to know more, just come to my talk a couple of hours after in this room, 11:20. Yeah. Then the second thing that I wanted to talk to you is about the API first story. Since 1 year ago, we are also building a new story around all the headless API first initiatives are out there, and so we want to broaden the offering of Plone, right? So we have these two monoliths now that I like to call them. That is the classic UI and the Volto UI. But when we want to implement projects on them, we are constrained to them, right? So we made some decisions in Volto, in classic UI, and we have to go full for one solution, right? And sometimes we don't want that. We only want to access our content in Plone, right, and show it somewhere, right? So what we did is create a series of libraries, new libraries, and we're working already on them. Some of them are in alpha. Some of them we already have worked quite a bit on them. And thanks to these libraries, we can drop access and render Plone content basically in any JavaScript framework out there, which will be huge also. And yeah, I'd like also to place you to first of all Piero's talk, that it's also today, He will show the experience in Red Turtle using Next.js. They even already have a project on it, so it's working, right? And I have also a talk on Friday in the last slot. So yeah, I place you there if you want to know more about them, about these new libraries. Yeah, and yeah, thanks all for being here, and yeah, talk to you later.
So you see, Timo also is going to get into the blooper video. Here. So there's one important message I want to pass to my friends. It's great to have you here. And we are opening for 2 questions. So please raise your hand if someone has a question here. Not seeing hands, or am I? So if we have no questions, I want just to say there's another talk that's going to be given by Gilberto that also uses Next.js as a front end for a Plone site using Plone at Plone/client. So we have real use cases, okay? So thank you all. Please, a round of applause to our colleagues.